It was 15 years ago that Amy and I tied the knot after dating exclusively for 3 years following our first date. At the time, Amy was a college sophomore. My name is Mark Butler, and I was a junior when we first met at a party. From that moment on, we became inseparable, remaining a couple until I graduated 2 years later. We spent Amy's senior year apart, as we had already planned to marry after her graduation. About 6 months into our marriage, we attended a barbecue hosted by friends, with several couples our age in attendance. As the night wore on, the group dwindled to just us and 3 other couples, sitting around a fire pit talking and enjoying drinks. The conversation shifted to the idea of a celebrity hall pass. "What the hell is a celebrity hall pass?" I asked, intrigued. Sadie, a petite blonde sitting next to me, explained. "It's pretty much what it sounds like. A game where you name the one celebrity you'd hypothetically get a free pass to break your marriage vows with." "So it's just a game you all play?" I asked skeptically. "Yes and no," and Sadie replied with a mischievous smile, patting her husband Tom on the leg. "It started as a game, but Tom and I actually agreed to give each other a real hall pass. It doesn't even have to be a celebrity." I was stunned. "Wait, you're saying you two actually have an agreement where either of you can, at any time..." Tom looked me directly in the eye, laughing. "That's right, buddy. There's a bit more to it, but that's the gist. The other couples here have the same arrangement." He gestured to the other pairs, adding, "Katie's even used hers already, haven't you?" Katie, blushing, lowered her head. "Tom, you don't need to broadcast that." Tom chuckled. "Oh, come on. It was that conference, right? You worked with that guy whose wife died in a car crash?" Katie nodded reluctantly. I called Carl and told him I was going to use my hall pass to comfort the guy. Amy had been quiet throughout the discussion, sitting close and holding my hand. "Kyle, you were fine with Katie being with another man?" I asked, incredulously. "Oh, yeah," Carl replied casually. "She came home to me, and I'll get to use mine someday." The conversation continued, with everyone naming their celebrity hall pass choices. Amy teased me into naming one after she revealed hers. 15 years later, I couldn't remember who we each picked, but I distinctly remembered the fiery intimacy we shared when we got home that night. Amy even confessed she was imagining her fantasy celebrity during our lovemaking. The next morning, I made it clear to her that I would never be okay with the idea of a real hall pass. Amy agreed, assuring me it was all just part of the game. That night's events eventually faded from memory as we moved on with life. We started our family quickly, welcoming a boy and a girl not long after. We stayed in touch with Sadie and Tom for a few years, but lost contact after their divorce. About 2 years ago, I ran into Tom at a bar. I stopped in for a drink after work and spotted him sitting alone. Over a beer, he revealed that not only had he and Sadie divorced, but the other 2 couples from that barbecue had also split up. The hall pass was the root cause for all of them, Tom said. We all thought it would add excitement to our marriages without consequences, but we couldn't have been more wrong. After each pass was used, Comparisons and suspicions crept in, and the mistrust led to resentment, which eventually ended the marriages. Our conversation confirmed what I had believed back at that party. The hall pass might work as a fantasy game, but in reality it was a disaster. I intended to share the story with Amy, but never found the right time with our busy schedules. Sitting here now, I wish I had. It was a Thursday night, and Amy was away at a conference in L.A. Around midnight, my phone rang. It was Amy, and from the background noise I could tell she was in a club. Her voice sounded slurred, a clear sign she had been drinking. "You're not going to believe this, but we met Joshua from my soap," she exclaimed. "He likes me, and I'm going to use my hall pass." "What? What did you say about using your hall pass?" I shouted, trying to make sense of her words. "Yay, Anne, I knew you'd understand. See you Saturday," she replied before hanging up. "Mum, what are you saying? Can you hear me?" I yelled into the phone, but the call had already ended. I immediately tried calling her back, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I left her multiple messages, urging her not to do anything she'd regret, and warning her of the consequences of breaking our vows. The following morning I tried calling her again, but received no response. Friday turned into a day of anguish, as I had no idea what was happening in L.A. After work, I took the kids to my parents' house and then headed to Jack's place. His wife, Jenny, had gone on the same trip with Amy. Jack greeted me at the door, surprised to see me. "Hi, Mark, what's going on?" "I need your help," I said, my voice tight. "I haven't been able to reach Amy. She called me last night and something didn't sound right. Can you call Jenny and see if she knows anything?" "Sure," Jack replied. "I'll call her and let her know you're here." "No," I stopped him. "Don't tell her I'm here. I'm worried Amy might have asked her to cover for her. Just call and casually bring up Amy. I'd like to listen in without her knowing." "Okay, buddy. They should be done with classes by now?" Jack agreed. As Jack reached for his phone, I switched on the voice recorder on mine. Jenny picked up on the first ring. "Hi, honey. You must have ESP. I just got back to my room," Jenny said cheerfully. "We've got that dinner tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow?" They chatted about the conference before Jack casually asked, "Have you seen much of Amy? Mark called and left me a message about her." Jenny hesitated. "Shh, don't tell him we talked. The last I saw of her was last night. We were all drinking when this soap star came over to our table. Amy got his autograph, they danced a few times, and she mentioned something about having a hall pass. He immediately volunteered to be her partner. I tried to talk her out of it, but she said it was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. She whispered that she was going to let him... You know, next thing I knew, they left the club together. Oh, I'm in arm. I haven't seen her since. Don't tell Mark." Jack ended the call and turned to look at me, his face unreadable. "Here's the paraphrased version of your text, adhering strictly to your outlined requirements." "Apologies, brother, but do you and your wife have an agreement about a hall pass?" "No, we don't. Years ago we played a game called Celebrity Hall Pass, but I later told her explicitly that I would never consent to anything like that." "What are you planning to do?" he asked. I replied, "I don't know, but it won't be pleasant." On my way home, I stopped by my parents' house and asked Mum if she could take care of the kids for the weekend. She said something was wrong, but I didn't tell her what. Back at home, I tried calling and texting Amy multiple times, but I got no response. I assumed she'd turned off her phone to avoid interruptions while she was with her soap star. Amy's flight was scheduled to land by mid-afternoon. Since Jenny had gotten a ride with Amy, I asked Jack to text me when Amy dropped off. I set up a video camera on a shelf in the living room, preparing to confront her. I wanted her words recorded. When the garage door rumbled open, I nearly leapt from my chair, quickly pressing the record button on the remote. I tried to stay composed. Amy walked in from the kitchen with her bag, smiling brightly. "Oh, my God! What a wild trip!" she exclaimed enthusiastically. "Yeah, I'm sure," I replied. "I've been trying to reach you," she exclaimed. "My phone broke. I dropped it and it completely shattered." Trying to remain calm, I brought up her call to me late Thursday night. "The last time we talked, I couldn't hear you clearly. It sounded like you mentioned meeting a soap star and using your hall pass." Amy responded eagerly. "Oh, yeah! We were at this club and Joshua Morrow came to our table. You know, the guy from my soap. We danced a few times, started talking about the hall pass game, and, well, he's so attractive. He actually told me to use my pass on him. That's why I called you. Can you believe it? He took me to his house, and, well, you probably don't want the details." No, I'd love to hear how he seduced my wife with his celebrity charm, considering he's likely been with countless other women," I said, fuming. Amy remained oblivious to my anger and continued. "Oh, yes, he was so experienced, really knew his way around a woman's body. He even took one of those pills. You should try one. They make you last forever. And he was incredible. All those rumors about stars being great lovers. True, her excitement was uncontainable until she finally noticed my expression. Mark, are you okay?" she asked. "No, I'm not," I replied. "My wife is standing here confessing to cheating, and she can't stop grinning about it." "Cheating? What are you talking about, Mark? This was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Joshua was my hall pass. I thought you'd be happy for me, living out a fantasy." "A fantasy?" I said bitterly. "You think I'm supposed to be happy about you breaking our wedding vows?" "I didn't break our vows," she shot back. "I took a weekend off to live out a dream like what our friends did. I just used my hall pass." Ames' expression began to show concern. "No, Amy," I said firmly. "That was a game. I made it very clear it wasn't real, and I would never violate our vows or accept you doing so. If you had the chance to be with a celebrity, I'd support you. I don't see why you can't be happy. I had such a memorable experience," she replied. "Don't worry," I said. "I'll never forget this either. Neither will the family you've disregarded." I walked over, grabbed her hand, and pulled her wedding ring off her finger. "Did you sleep with him while wearing this, the symbol of our love and commitment?" "We didn't make love. We had intimacy," she retorted. "And yes, I was wearing it. I'd thought about taking it off, but Joshua wanted me to leave it on." "Of course he did," I said. He wanted to mock our marriage by being with you, knowing you were married." Amy stood with her hand on her hip, her signature angry stance. "You're overreacting," she argued. "It was just 2 nights. Why don't I take you upstairs to make it up to you?" "No, thanks," I replied. "By the way, did he use protection?" "Well, mainly, well, it's not start." "Well, no," she admitted, confused. "You let a man with likely over 100 partners, and maybe some men too, have unprotected intimacy with you. Who knows what disease he might have given you, and unless you're back on the pill, you might be pregnant." "Are you?" "No, you know I'm not on the pill," she said defensively. "Then you might be carrying a soap star's child," I said. Amy's face fell as she calculated the timing. "Well, no, I had my period last week. I won't be fertile until later this week." "Interesting how you're only thinking about that now," I said. "How many times did he not use protection?" "Mark, you're blowing this out of proportion," she replied. "So I'm not supposed to react to my wife's infidelity and her complete disregard for her family?" I countered. Stamping her foot, Amy insisted, "I told you it wasn't infidelity. I called you and told you I was using my hall pass." "That's the problem, Amy," I said. "You use something that doesn't exist. I never gave you permission to destroy our marriage and family." "Stop being so dramatic. I really thought you'd be happy for me. Clearly I was wrong. I'm done talking about this. Where are the kids?" "They're at my parents' house. I didn't want them here while we discussed our divorce." "Divorce? You're divorcing me over this?" she asked, stunned. "No," I said calmly, looking straight into her eyes. "You made your decision, so now I'll make mine," I said firmly. "That's absurd. Are you seriously saying you're going to ruin our family over this? It's not a big deal, and you just need to get over it," Amy shouted at me. Without replying, I walked upstairs to the guest room and locked the door behind me. For over an hour, Amy banged on the door, yelling that we needed to talk, but I stayed silent. Early the next morning, I left the house before Amy woke up and drove to my parents' place. My dad was the only one awake, so I joined him for coffee and told him everything. He didn't interrupt, letting me finish before saying, "What a cheating woman." "Dad, can I ask what you would do in my shoes?" I asked. "Son, you need to remember that when I was your age, things were different. This kind of stuff seems acceptable now. But if your mother had done what your wife did, I'd have put a bullet in her. That said, you've got to decide for yourself." "I don't think I can move past this," I admitted. "She knew how I felt about cheating. I thought she felt the same way." "Well, what about that prenup her mom insisted on? Why did she make us sign it?" I asked. "I questioned her about that at your wedding," Dad replied. "She wouldn't explain, just said she had her reasons. Told me her mom caught her dad cheating multiple times and wanted to protect her daughter. Funny how Amy seems to have forgotten all about that," I said. Dad chuckled. I'm guessing you're going to remind her." "Oh, absolutely. But not right away. I want to see what she does first. She kept insisting it wasn't a big deal and that I just needed to move on," I explained. I honestly don't think she's sorry, or even thinks she did anything wrong." Around 10, my phone started buzzing with calls and messages from Amy, wanting to know where I was. When I didn't reply, she started calling the kids. Julie, our daughter, walked into the kitchen, yawning. "Dad, Mom wants to know where you are and why you're not answering her calls." "What did she say to you?" I asked. That's funny. She asked me the same thing. She wanted to know what you told us. What's going on with you two? Are you cheating on her, or is she cheating on you?" "Wow, she's sharp," Dad said with a smirk. "Great. Mom cheated on you, didn't she?" Julie asked. "I think that's a question for your mother," I replied, not wanting to be accused of turning her against Amy, but I knew Julie would be furious with her mom. Julie, being a stubborn teenager, pulled out her phone and put it on speaker. "Dad's here. Did you cheat on him?" "What are you talking about?" Amy replied. "Whatever he said isn't true. What did your dad tell you?" "He didn't say anything, Mom. I can see it on his face. You cheated, didn't you?" "No, I didn't. And if he says I did, he's lying," Amy insisted. "Okay, Mom, you sound guilty to me," Julie said, hanging up the phone. "Sorry, Dad, I can't believe she'd do this to you. I assume you're going to divorce her. You've always preached honesty and morality. I don't blame you." With a somber expression, she turned and headed back upstairs. "Your daughter's smart, mature beyond her years," Dad commented. "She'll handle this fine." "I'm not sure I will," I admitted. 30 minutes later, there was a loud knock at the front door. I heard Dad answer it. "Ida, you don't want to be here right now," Dad said. I'm sorry, but you're not welcome today." "Mr. Butler, I don't know what your son told you, but it's all lies. I haven't done anything." "Whatever you say, Amy, but you still can't come in." "Tell him I didn't do anything. If he claims I did, there will be consequences," Amy shouted before storming off. "She looked angry," I said when Dad returned to the kitchen. "Be careful, son," he warned. "I've seen that look before. She's like a cornered cat. She'll lie and fight her way out of this. Make sure you've got proof, because she's ready for a battle." That evening, Amy gave me the silent treatment after the kids and I returned home. I slept in the guest room again, but this time no one banged on the door. The next morning the kids left for school while I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee. Amy came in acting as if everything was normal. "The kids get off okay?" she asked while pouring her coffee. I nodded. Are you sleeping in the guest room? Are you feeling all right?" "You know why. I don't want to share a bed with my unfaithful wife," I replied. "Unfaithful wife? What are you talking about?" she asked. "So, you're going to deny being with a soap star while you were away?" I said. "Mark, I don't know what you're trying to pull," she said, glaring at me. "If you accuse me of something you can't prove, you'll regret it. You know you have no evidence." "Oh, you're waiting for war," I said. I'm not, she replied. "We can go back to normal, but that's up to you. I'm willing to move past your baseless accusations." "Sorry, but I can't forget what you did," I said. "I'm telling you again, I didn't do anything, and you can't prove otherwise. Let it go and move on, or you'll regret it," she warned. I didn't respond, simply got up and left the house, as though heading to work I'd already called in sick. After waiting down the street for Amy to leave for her job as an associate principal, I returned home. Her words stuck with me, so I decided to look for evidence. Jenny had mentioned Amy got an autograph from the soap star, which she wouldn't display if she planned to deny the affair. I figured it would have been somewhere. After 2 hours of searching, I found it. Buried in an old briefcase in the back of her closet was a publicity photo of the soap star. It was signed "To my friend Amy, Joshua Morrow." On the back another message read, "You were great in bed, Joshua." I scanned the photo and returned it to its place. Next, I headed to a lawyer. Before leaving, I copied the scan, a recording of Amy's phone confession, and our prenup onto 2 flash drives. The attorney, Vicky Sampson, was notorious for taking down cheating spouses. After hearing my story and my plans, she leaned back and smiled. "This is brilliant. You've set the trap perfectly. Just make sure you're ready. Before we show the proof, people will think you're either lying or crazy." "I want her to believe she's in control right up until the end," I said. Mrs. Sampson shook my hand firmly. "I'll prepare the necessary documents and have her served at work. But first, there are a few tasks I need you to complete. Start by reviewing your credit card statements to figure out which club she met the soap star at. Next, access her iCloud account. I suspect there's a selfie of her with Joshua. She's likely smart enough to remove anything compromising from her phone, but she might have backed it up somewhere. If we're lucky, it'll still be in her cloud storage." Hurried home, I immediately opened her computer. I didn't even need to try hard to access her iCloud. Hidden in her photo folder were the 3 pictures I was looking for, 2 of Amy with the soap star, and 1 featuring Jenny, the soap star, and her friend Jenny. I transferred the images to a flash drive. A quick inspection of the photos revealed another crucial detail. The name of the club was visible on the wall in the background. When I shared this with my lawyer, she was thrilled. She instructed me not to tell anyone about the photos under any circumstances. Her strategy was to have Amy served at school on Friday afternoon, giving me time to take the kids to my parents for the weekend. She also emphasized that I must not move out of the house, no matter what Amy said or did. That Friday, after dropping the kids off at my parents' house, my phone rang. It was Amy. I let the call go to voicemail and ignored her messages. I had barely been home for 10 minutes when she stormed in. Sitting in the living room, I turned on the video camera as soon as I heard the garage door rumble. I didn't want to miss anything she might say. "You son of a what the hell do you think you're doing?" she yelled. I started to respond, but she cut me off. "You couldn't just let it go, could you? What's wrong, Mark? Is your fragile male ego bruised? You humiliated me in front of my co-workers, and you're going to regret it. You want a divorce? Fine, but you'll pay for it. You know you can't prove the cheating you put in the divorce petition. Without proof, I'll take everything from you. I hope you're happy. You could have just let me have my fun, but no." Amy stomped around the house as I sat silently. She returned to the living room, her eyes blazing. "So, when are you moving out?" "I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here," I replied. "Oh, yes, you are. If you want a divorce, you have to leave," she snapped. She stared at me, waiting for me to budge, but I just smiled at her. "Fine. When this is over, you'll wish you had kept your mouth shut and let us move on with our lives." The next month was extremely tense in the house. Amy and I didn't speak, and the kids started siding with her. Julie even began questioning whether her mum had really cheated, as Amy told everyone I made up the entire story. Her lawyer filed a motion accusing me of false claims, and even tried to get a court order to force me out of the house, but the judge denied it. The court expedited the case, giving both sides limited time for depositions and witness interviews. My lawyer deposed both Amy and Jenny, and they denied everything, claiming Amy never met the soap star, let alone went off with him. While preparing for my deposition, my lawyer reminded me to be truthful but not to offer any extra information. She hoped Amy's attorney wouldn't ask about the evidence we'd collected, assuming we had none. Just as Mrs. Sampson predicted, they focused on the fact that I hadn't witnessed any infidelity firsthand and avoided asking about proof. I got the impression they didn't know Amy had actually done what I was accusing her of. At the hearing, I testified about Amy's affair, explaining my views on adultery and my opposition to hall passes. During cross-examination, they repeated the same questions from the deposition, highlighting that I hadn't seen anything inappropriate myself. Amy testified that she hadn't been unfaithful and, like me, claimed to be against both adultery and hall passes. Amy's lawyer brought Jenny to the stand, and she swore that the encounter with the soap star never happened. I glanced at her husband, Jack, who was in the courtroom. He lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. Jenny began to squirm when my lawyer questioned her about calling Jack and telling him that Amy had left with the soap star. Clearly nervous, she stuck to her story, denying the call ever happened. When Jenny stepped down, Amy and her lawyer looked smug as they announced they had no further evidence. Amy's lawyer began arguing that my claims were false and demanded sanctions against me. The judge started admonishing my lawyer for not proving our allegations, but, said Mrs. Framson with a sly smile, stood up. Your Honor, we have rebuttal evidence. Amy's lawyer immediately objected. We weren't notified of any rebuttal evidence. Mrs. Sampson calmly replied, We are not required to disclose rebuttal evidence. If their witnesses had told the truth, there would be no need for this. The judge smiled and allowed Mrs. Sampson to proceed. Mrs. Sampson called an investigator to the stand. Judge, before we continue, we acknowledge that Mrs. Butler did not have an affair with Joshua Morrow, she began. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but Mrs. Sampson shot me a look, signaling me to stay quiet. Amy's lawyer jumped to his feet. With this admission, we demand an end to this charade and sanctions against Mr. Becker. With a grin, Mrs. Sampson countered, No, Your Honor, we are not saying she didn't cheat. We are simply saying it wasn't with Joshua Morrow. Jenny was recalled to the stand. My lawyer asked her again if she had been with Amy at the conference and whether they had met the man they thought was Joshua Morrow. Jenny repeated her denial. She was then asked if she had called her husband to report that Amy left with a man who wasn't her husband. Despite being reminded she was under oath, Jenny again denied making the call. I glanced at her husband, who mouthed, I'm sorry. I silently replied, No, you will be. My lawyer then played the recording of Jenny's phone call. Amy's lawyer immediately objected, but the judge intervened. Your Honor, my lawyer explained, my client was a guest in the witness's home and had permission to hear the call. The judge dismissed the objection and asked Jenny directly if the voice on the recording was hers. She hesitated, but was forced to admit it was. Finally, there was concrete evidence that backed my claims, and I felt a surge of vindication. Amy was called back to the stand and once again denied admitting to any intimate encounter with another man upon her return from the trip. Her composure shattered when the video of her detailed description of her experience with Joshua Morrow was played. Tears streamed down her face as the selfies and the autographed publicity photo were entered into evidence. As Amy stepped down, the judge interrupted. Counsel, I'm confused, he said. You stated Mrs. Butler did not have an intimate relationship with Joshua Morrow, yet you've just submitted proof suggesting she did. Mrs. Sampson stood and recalled her investigator. Your Honor, Our evidence shows Mrs. Butler committed adultery, but not with the person she believed. The investigator then presented surveillance photos from the club. Several pictures clearly showed Amy with the man she left the club with. The investigator clarified, "This is not Joshua Morrow. This man is a known individual with a history of sexually transmitted diseases." I glanced at Amy, whose expression of pure shock was priceless. After a brief recess, the judge returned to deliver his ruling. He spoke at length about the importance of honesty and fidelity, concluding that Amy had violated the prenup's adultery clause. The judge was in my favor, upholding the terms of the agreement. The judge further stated that even without the prenup, he would have granted me full custody of the children, citing Amy's extensive deceit as evidence of unfit parenting. Tears streaming down her face, Amy started to leave the courtroom, but the judge thundered, "Mrs. Butler, stay where you are. We're not finished." He called Jenny to the bench alongside Amy. "Both of you raised your right hand and swore to tell the truth in this courtroom. That oath is sacred here," he declared, staring directly at Jenny. "I don't care if you thought you were helping your friend. Lying is lying. If this were a criminal trial, you'd both be facing jail time. I'm holding you both in contempt for perjury." He fined each of them $5,000, the maximum penalty. As if Amy's day couldn't get worse, she exited the courthouse to find a local news crew waiting. My lawyer had discreetly tipped them off. "Mrs. Butler, do you have any comment about destroying your family over a one-night stand with a fake TV star?" the reporter asked, shoving a microphone in her face. That question was the breaking point. Amy screamed and lunged at the reporter, her hands flailing wildly. She tackled the reporter to the ground, yanking her hair. A deputy had to deploy a taser to subdue Amy. The entire scene, captured on video, was aired nationwide that night. Amy didn't get to witness her infamous moment. She was locked up in the county jail, where she would remain for 6 months. No, I didn't have a beautiful blonde waiting to replace her. I was too busy adjusting to life as a single dad, raising 2 kids on my own. And no, I didn't take her back when she was released from jail, despite her repeated attempts. Even my mother, feeling sorry for Amy, urged me to give her another chance. Amy had lost her career and become the subject of public humiliation throughout our town. After 3 months of relentless calls and messages, I finally agreed to meet her at her mother's house. Quietly, I sat and listened as Amy poured out her heart, saying how much she loved and missed me. She said she longed to be part of our family again. Due to her conviction and arrest, she was now only allowed limited supervised visits with the kids. She apologized for lying about her hookup, as she called it, and expressed embarrassment over being duped by an imposter. She ended by begging me to take her back, promising to be the best wife I'd ever known. I stood up and took a deep breath. "My, that was a heartfelt speech, and I believe you mean every word. You've apologized for lying, said you missed our family, and claimed you loved me. I believe all of it. But what's most revealing is what you didn't say. Not once have you apologized for breaking our vows, or shown any regret for betraying me. I think you're just upset it wasn't your dream guy. I don't think you're truly sorry for the cheating, or even believe it was cheating. The answer to your plea is no. And not just no, hell no. I will never take you back. Stop contacting me, or I'll reinstate the restraining order." Amy stood, crying. I'm sorry I enjoyed it. Is that what you wanted to hear?" We're done. Go live your life, but it won't be with me." I walked out as Amy screamed behind me, her mother holding her back. So, that's the conclusion of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take an unexpected turn? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's discuss. If this story kept you hooked, don't forget to hit that like button. If you're new here or haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. I share engaging stories every day, so subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss out. Thanks for reading, and see you next time.